Mullumbimby, and today we're talking about companion planting. Does it work? And from my experience, I would say yes. And then from other YouTubers over the years that I believe don't really understand the science of it so much, say no. And you can maybe do some searches in YouTube and see who those YouTubers are and what their qualifications are, their experience with it, and things like that. And from my experience, I have found that it can be overhyped in many areas. So then it can come to the area where we're going, oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't do what people say. And there's so many reasons why it doesn't work for some people, right? Because if you're doing a few things wrong and following some of the books that they say how it does it, but your place might be different, a bit of a different soil type, different ecosystems, things like that. So if you've got any questions about companion planting, we will be discussing it further down the line. I've been running out a few little live shows sort of behind the scenes without me being there, just old reruns of videos. So interesting to see how many people show up today because I'm only in the chat box on those pieces of content. But companion planting, does it work? Now, a lot of people know this, the one which is the three sisters, which I think is the corn, beans, and something else that grows that the American Indians used to do. That's the most famous system. And there's lots of different ways of looking at companion planting. And obviously, it was observed the first time we put a seed in the ground, started growing our own food, and we didn't have all the different systems around then to kill pests and bugs and all that type of stuff. And so observation and trial and error was really the key element to success in gardening. And we didn't think anything else other than organic because we didn't know anything else. We used all the inputs around from our local, wherever we lived or wherever we were at that time, to grow the best food possible. And there was also higher risk involved because some people are farming. And if they didn't get their farming, didn't get their crops in, they didn't get any income, or they didn't have enough food through the season. So places that had, like a very cold winter and a warm, hot summer were at higher risks, different to, say, places in Asia where the temperatures fluctuates, but it's similar all year round, and you don't have the risk factors involved other than, say, typhoons and things like that. So there are other things, right? But companion planting has evolved over a very, very long time. And my experience with it has been something that from the first day I learnt about. I had a little book and I just, it opened my eyes to it, and it had all the story about how this lady discovered it and all the different companion planting systems and all the recipes and all those types of things. And down the line, I'm going to share with you a simple formula that you'll go, so keep on watching and you'll go, oh, that's really cool, Marty. That's how I can simplify it without having to read any books and go through lists and feeds and all that type of stuff. I'll look on Pinterest for all different types of companion planting plantings. And also talking about how the science and companion planting has evolved over time. And we'll ask about your experience with it. Have you had a good experience? Has it worked for you? Do you have any special companion planting ones that you've been observing and using over time and used time and time again? I'd like to know about that coming up in the future. And I've got a story about a papaya tree that has really opened my eyes and shown me straight up proof of what I'm going to be talking about in the science of it. Now, as science is improving over time, what discoveries have they made? Well, they've done a lot of tests on the tobacco plant over time, and they've put things like viruses next to the plants. They've put things like, what do you call it, like hosts sort of thing that crawl around and climb up things and stuff like that. And what they found over time is that the tobacco plant, so there's obviously other plants, but this is the plant that they use to do most of the tests with, that the tobacco plant would submit pheromones. And when they would put on, say, a certain pest onto the tobacco plant, it would submit a pheromone. Say, for example, we put a scale onto the tobacco plant, right? Now, the tobacco plant knows that it's getting eaten by the scale or sucked in the sap because it can pick up some type of chemical structure from that scale, and then it can send out. So they measure the pheromones in these labs, and they can measure the pheromones, and there's different pheromones each time, and it would send out a pheromone that would possibly attract predators that would then want to feed on scale, and then within a day or two, those predators would get up, would arrive, and then feed on the scale. And so they're going, well, this is how plants in many areas must protect themselves, because they can't just get up and walk away. They can't just get a brush and brush this scale off. So they send out pheromones, and that will then attract the pests and things like that over time. So that's one way, which is very different to what we think how it works. So when I was studying horticulture and agribusiness, one of my favorite teachers, who was an organics teacher, and we were doing, I think it was in the macadamias. No, it was the organic gardening section. And I asked him what he thought about companion planting. He said to me, it doesn't work unless you brush the plant and release the pheromone or release the essential oil to confuse the pests. And I was like, I did some more research on it. And in some ways, he's right, because in Africa, where there's a type of lemongrass there that you squeeze onto your skin, and the oil, that scent will keep a certain type of mosquito away. But they found that the mosquitoes actually bred in that type of grass. So unless that oil was released for some reason, it wouldn't scare the mosquitoes off. So in some ways, he was right. But science has shown over and over again that this is an evolving process, and we can prove that these things are working, and that plants do have a sort of a mind of their own, because they can read what's going on in the chemical structure of what's actually on their leaves, and if it's something's coming to attack them. So very interesting stuff. I don't have any links or anything down below on that. It's just stuff that I should have saved and bookmarked and things, but I haven't done it. So I'd love to hear, before I talk about the papaya tree and something that I really experienced. So we're talking above the ground stuff at the moment, so above the ground companion planting system, but under the ground, what happens under the ground as well? And I've got a really cool story coming up for you. But firstly, I'd like to hear from you guys. Do you believe, now, no answer is silly or stupid or whatever. You're allowed to have your own choice, your opinion. I really get annoyed when people just shut people down because they don't agree with their opinion these days. We need to be able to debate and share our own views and opinions, and not feel threatened to experience some type of attack on that. And so, yeah, no question or anything like that, or any sharing anything is regarded as silly or stupid. We all learn, and some amazing stuff comes through here in the chat box. So I'll pull them across, any question down below, and yeah, get your questions ready before I go and talk about the papaya. And so, yeah, get your questions ready, and I'd love to hear what you've got to say. Now, the second probably most common one, or even the most common in the garden, would just be the straight out basil tomato one. And that's probably the one that I find that works the most. The other form of companion planting really is, say, example, just providing some type of shade or providing some type of extra ecosystem habitat to build out around your garden, such as blocking a cool wind by building a sort of little mini windbreak, and then planting other plants in front of it and trapping the sunlight and stuff. So, and then allowing those plants to crawl up or vine up over and create these canopies and things, which is similar to the Three Sisters method of, I think, the beans crawling up the corn. And I think the other one might be cucumbers in there, but I forget. So I'm interested to know if anyone can remember the Three Sisters methods. But I found with tomatoes and the basil, that's probably my overall favorite one. The rest is really understanding plants and then planting properly and having good soil type. And we'll talk about that in the papaya story coming up. But I am interested to hear what you've got to say. And we've got here, I think, squash, you said. So the third one. So we got corn, beans, and squash. So all that family, I guess, could be used in those systems. And again, I'd love to hear what you've got to say. And thanks for showing up. These little live shows, I haven't been showing my face too much, but just been doing reruns and seeing how they go over the next few days, and if the videos stick around or disappear or not on my channel or in the YouTube feeds. My tests will work, but what I'm finding out is I'm really suck at thumbnails, and YouTube is really important of having a really good thumbnail, and you've got to plan in advance. So I think I might be making some mistakes there. Anyway, getting back to the story here, we've got Aaron here. And companion planting, it works perfectly in nature and all the forest by itself. Then it can be replicated in our own backyard. It is how the soil food web works. And yeah, that's sort of something that we're coming up to. I want to be talking about down the line. So great comment. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing that. Nature does the work is something that I really promote, and working with nature and understanding how nature works, and understanding God's design, so we can implement that in our garden. And if you do follow nature and God's design, then you find you will have much more success with your gardening systems. Now, if we're looking back and say the history of Europe and things along those lines, when they were starting to farm and along those things, people were still discovering different types of plants and crops, and so through Americas and all that type of stuff. So the information didn't travel around the globe so much in those days. So it was it would have been very segregated to certain areas and not shared out so much throughout the world like it can right now. So it's really only been since the introduction of the internet, since this methodology has been able to be shared more, and really probably only in the last 10 years has it really been spoken about much more, other than, say, you got a book out of the library and things like along those lines. So I'd love to hear what you guys, your thoughts on it so far. Do you think it works? Give me a yes or a no. I'd love to know what you honestly think, or if you're considering trying it, and or any questions you think, well, what should I do? What's my best options for companion planting? And Aaron says here, more roots in the soil equals more natural ground cover and more healthy food for us. And yeah, roots in the soil is super, super important. And, I wanted to bring out a video called Companion Planting Below the Ground. But the problem is because it's just not the way that YouTube works and everything does. They get a few hundred views, and I put a lot of work into it. And I'm just like, wow, it's a bit disappointing. So it just goes to show that the world possibly isn't really interested in it, or I'm not bringing the production value out that people are wanting these days. But I believe that the stories can be spoken about, and we can do it here in the live show for those who are interested in that. And it also is it ends up being an okay time saver for me, and not so much of a letdown if I produce that content and it doesn't really get looked at. All right, so so I'm after just a yes or a no in the chat box, and please just be honest. I'm really interested to hear what you think, and your thoughts on it. And what I'll do now is, before we get into the papaya tree story, is I'll let you in on the formula. So if you think about without having, like, and this is not having to look into books and all this type of stuff. So you're out in the garden, you've got a whole series of plants, or you're thinking about going and planting a whole lot of new plants. You're getting ready. So let's just say annuals. So we're planting annuals at the moment. We can talk about perennial planting down the line. I'll just make a list of on my list here, perennials, because that's really important as well. And we'll look at that. So the formula really is, if it doesn't cook together, it doesn't really like growing together. So it's as simple as that. A really great way is to look on a great jar of tomatoes, like a, how do you call it, like a tomato sauce, or for making a spaghetti bolognese, like a really good expensive one. You look on the ingredients in there, of all the ingredients that match together. Now, all those plants and herbs and things that are in that food together, they all combine together well. Those essential oils combine together well. Those flavors combine together well, and that seems to be at above and below the ground as well. So if it doesn't cook together, generally overall it doesn't grow together. Now, it's not an exact complete science, but if you want to follow a formula and you want to get things closer to correct, then that's it. Example would be tomatoes. So parsley, basil, oregano, those ones close together, no problem, grow together quite well, go really good in a like tomato bolognese sauce. So that's a really great example. And I'm still waiting for people to give me a yes or no. I think people are sort of a bit scared to get answered. Jim Fisher's come in here. I'll just put my email down below. He's asking me for my email, so I'll just put it in the chat box here, because it will disappear later on. And you can actually get my email in the about section on YouTube as well. So it's just there, Jim. Should go through, no problem. And yeah, there it is there. If you want to send me some photos, that'd be okay with me. All right. Aaron Hopkins. Yes. It definitely works. I've been gardening for most of my life and been in horticulture for most of my working life. Wonderful. Great to hear. And, it's interesting if you get into sort of that whole new age thing that people will go, if you don't believe that it doesn't work, it's not going to work. And in some ways, I think it does, like that mentally, because you don't, subconsciously, you're not putting in the effort. And if you really believe that it's working, it means you'll put more effort into making it work. And from my experience, I would say yes as well. And that's just my point of view. But you're allowed to have your own one, and there's no judgment here. With this Ivanka, with this horrible hot and humid weather, does planting help even now? Any tips, any ideas to help my plants? Yeah, this is a question that I'm working on at the moment with my systems. And as I said, companion planting, we need to look at it in more than just the scents and pheromones and confusing pests. Is like, I mentioned, like the Three Sisters one, where we have things climb up, because it creates a host for the vines and things to be held on. So we need to look at these different ways of growing plants that will provide shade, building structures that we know will provide shade, considering our airflow, the way the sun moves and things, different times of the year, and building out our gardens accordingly so the plants work in harmony together. Now, I know that sounds a bit tricky, probably for beginners and things, but at the moment, I'm building some trellises, and I made a video a few back about the survival trellis garden. So if you haven't seen that, check that out. You can pull it up, pull it down quick. It's really cheap to make, and you can create these shade covers, and you can produce things. But probably the biggest thing with humidity is the wind flow. When we don't have much wind and airflow, humidity can be high. There's a lot of moisture in the air. So, but with sun, we can control that much better, and so we need to really just keep an eye on and create these systems to either block shade or trap sun So it could be the opposite, where it's too cold, and then we want to build things to trap sunlight and to stop wind and did things like that. So yeah, great question. Hopefully I was able to help there. It's a pretty hard one. I know it's been the hardest season in a very, very long time. And we've got here Glenn Cod. Just come back to my school veggie garden. I care for it, and it's covered in weeds. Oh yeah, because you just had 6 weeks off. Yeah, big job ahead of you. But it's a good time to replan and relook at it and think about what you can do into the future for sure. And Aaron says here, an exciting experiment for planting a permaculture garden is to throw a bag full of potatoes around and plant your plants wherever a potato sits. It saves a lot of headache on plant spacing. That's a really good one. I've never thought of that myself. I might give that a go. Throw a bag full of potatoes around and plant your plants wherever a potato sits. It saves a lot of headache. Okay, might be something I'll try going into the future. So while we're sort of pulling up these questions here, and if you've got any or something that you would like to say, yeah, happy to answer them for you. I'm going to talk about the papaya now, an experiment that it was an accidental experiment that happened, because I'm always studying about soil science and learning as much as I can about microbiology, fungi, and things like that. Now, I'm not I'm not a soil scientist or anything. I'm just, I'm a horticulturist working in the ag industry. I teach people online, and I just observe what's going in my garden. And I'm not on any farms anymore at the moment. Occasionally I get out to 560 farms, but I'm not there enough to do enough observations anymore. But in my own backyard over time, I grow a lot of subtropical plants, and I've pushed it to the edge of being close to temperate, on the edge of temperate subtropical, and still was able to grow really great subtropical plants. And one of them was the papaya. Now, it's a tropical tree, and they need a lot of heat, and they don't like a lot of rainfall, but they like to have rainfall like consistent. So a bit of rain, dry out, bit of rain, dry out. If it gets too wet, they get root rot. But so around that time, the science was talking a lot about plants sharing sugars, and the fungi below the ground. So we know that plants photosynthesize. They trap the sunlight going down through, push that energy down into the ground. That becomes sugars for the microbiology. That feeds the microbiology and the fungi down below. And in return, they release certain nutrients to plants. And the plants apparently have a little choice system saying, okay, I'd like some of this, I'd like some of that. Have you got some of this? I need a bit more of that. And the plants get fed accordingly. And this is why forests do so well. We're not going in and throwing fertilizers into forest gardens and things, and they're some of the most healthiest systems that you'll see. And so I had a really great papaya tree growing. The garden was about a year old at the time. My papaya tree was producing a lot of fruit, and I was really, really happy. It was about 4 to 5 feet high. And I thought, so I collected some seed from it, and I wanted to try something. I wanted to plant a papaya that in the shade that I knew would eventually grow up to about 3 foot and then would hit the sun, and had a good little ecosystem going where there wasn't too much wind and things like that. It was trapping sunlight. Once it got to that height of 3 feet, it would start producing fruit at around about 4 feet. And then I would have to chop the other one down because it was getting too big and it was sort of overhanging the back veranda, and I was a bit worried about it. I shouldn't have been worried. I should have let it keep going. But anyway, this is a part of the story of my mistake, how I made this discovery. And what I found was, so I got the seed from the big mother tree. I planted it in the shade to grow up into the sunlight. What I found, it was still in the shade. It had flowers. And I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. This is not what they teach in horticultural college and things like that. You have to have 6 hours of sunlight for a plant to fruit and to produce fruit, and even some stages to flower, or the flowers would flower and then drop off and not produce fruit. Anyway, it produced flowers, and I was like, this is really interesting. I wonder what's going on here. I wonder if the mother plant from this big plant, because it's the same seed stock, is passing on. Because I was growing above ground systems then. I was no dig system. I knew there was a lot of fungi in there. I was doing these straw bale bed gardens along the ground and introducing compost worms into them and linking these systems up. And I thought, I wonder if the fungi's moved through and it's sharing the sugars with its baby. And I was like, wow, this is really, really awesome to see. And it was over a long period of time. So I was creating short or quick videos then and just filming what was going on then. And I didn't film it over time, unfortunately. But what happened was it hadn't even reached the sun yet. And the flowers had pollinated and it started getting fruit. And I was like, now this is something really, really awesome. I'm not only seeing what I'm reading about and what I'm watching for content and things like that from other people that are doing this, that have got, soil scientists and stuff. I'm actually seeing this in real time. Anyway, it started producing fruit, and once it hadn't hit the sun yet, it was sort of like still a foot below the sunlight. So I knew by a few months it would hit the sunlight, and then the plant would absolutely explode. But what happened is I made a mistake, and at the same time it was a discovery. I chopped the mother plant down. I thought it was too big, and I chopped it down. I shouldn't have. I should have kept it growing because it was producing fruit for me. And it was, we make mistakes, but within a week after chopping the mother plant down, which I got the seed from and then planted, which was flowering and fruiting in the shade, only about 2 meters away. The tree, within a week, the baby tree suffered. It went right back. It just stopped growing good. It started going yellow. It just didn't look healthy. It dropped all those little fruits and things on it, and it was just like, wow, this is really sad. So the mother tree was talking somehow with the fungal system, sharing its photosynthesis through that system to its baby plant, because somehow it must have known, because it had the DNA in the seed. I don't know. As again, I'm not a soil scientist, but I observed this and saw this happen. So companion planting below the ground at the same time. Wow. And whether you believe me or not, doesn't really matter. I know what I saw, and it was something that it really, really blew me out. Anyway, we've got a question here from Deborah Jane Dixon, and she's been a long-time supporter of my channel. So I'd love to help her with this and see if we can answer and help her. She's, hi Marty, my cucumbers have a mite infestation at the moment. I've sprayed the leaves with worm tea and noticed the ladybugs have moved in. I'm wondering what to do next. Let the ladybugs do their thing. They eat around about, I think something like, oh man, it's crazy, like 20 times their body weight or more. I could have this wrong, but it's something like along those lines. And obviously, it could be that the cucumber is set out some type of pheromone. If you've got enough ladybugs around, hopefully they'll clean it up. But I would go in and give the ladybugs a bit of a hand and squash a few, flick a few off, drown them, whatever you can, without introducing any type of spray, other than just giving them a good feed with the worm tea at the moment, and just watch what's happening. But look out for ants as well if they're farming anything like that around. And and I'm sure you'll do okay. So just observe and keep an eye on it. And Aaron's probably said something similar here. Now your ladybugs are in, just sit back and let Mother Nature deal with it. But yeah, you can always go in and give them a bit of a hand, and go from there. And my friend Jim Fisher says it went through. Excited to share. Awesome, Jim. I'll have a look later on today when I get a bit of free time, and I'll get back to you. Thanks for sharing that with me. So do you have any experiences with companion planting? Do you have any more questions that you'd like to answer here? We just got a quick live show today. Generally on Saturdays, 8:30 a.m. We run them for an hour. And for me, it was just something to get out there and have a chat with you guys, and see what's happening in your garden, if I can help in any way. And as we did with Deborah Jane Dixon here, I'm pretty sure those lady beetles will solve that problem. And it's a great question to come into this show right at this time, because it's really what we're talking about. I don't know if you notice, for some reason, it's really bothering me. We'll keep on going. So yeah, like plants, they know now, and you can just do some Google searches on it. They can submit pheromones. We know from recent stuff from Easy Science that they could actually get photos of the color pheromone that they put out, and then when you companion planting together, these colors mix together. So insects are looking at things like certain colors and certain scents to find plants. They can't see that great. And so when we plant companion planting, these colors and scents mixing together, and we've got different heights and different levels and things, that confuses the pests. So that's something very basic to know. And yeah, thank you very much. You're very welcome. Yeah, no problem. This is something that I'd like to sort of mention here, because Aaron says, don't freak out when you see baby ladybugs larvae. They look quite weird. I wish I was able to pull up a photo of that. I don't have anything, something that it's really quite interesting. But yeah, I would Google that, Debbie, if you can, and have a look. And also, people that are really interested, there's a bug that it's called the assassin bug, and it's probably one of the best predators in the garden. And it looks a bit like when it's younger, it looks a bit like a stink bug. And I'm pretty sure they do that so they can hide in stink bugs' nests, because it's one of their favorite foods. And they look similar. And as they get older, they sort of grow a bit longer. And they're an amazing, amazing insect. And people kill them because they get a bit scared of them. So have a look in there. And the stink bug, actually, if you've got really good assassin bugs, you'll solve your stink bug problem. We did that on the avocado farm that I managed, and we were able to get it down within 20 to 30% damage from a farm that was not even able to produce, because everything was so damaged on the avocados, to get fruit out to market within a year. And we discovered the assassin bug nests in the trees, in the avocado trees. My boss said, keep on spraying. I stopped spraying because the spraying wasn't working. We couldn't get it high enough in the trees because the trees were too big. But what did the assassin bugs larvae look like? Well, it was very interesting, because when you look under the leaf, they actually had these long strands which look like spider webs, and at the end of each strand there was a little egg, and there would be 20 or 30 of them sort of hanging down, and that was the assassin bug nests. And then they would crawl off and sneak into probably the other sort of nests and things like that, that were sap sucking insects, and attack them and hunt them and prey on them. And they really are ferocious eaters. And so that's something, if you're really interested in that, Google that as well, and have a look at the assassin bug, and if you can find the assassin bug eggs, of what they look like. And also maybe predators in the garden that predate on other sap-sucking insects, what they look like, and where they are in your garden and your part of the world. It's always good to know what to look for, what to observe for, and then you can start to understand. We've been working on a grasshopper plague here for the last year. It's been mental, and we just don't have enough of these carnivorous insects around to keep the grasshopper levels down. So, like, if we had a good praying mantis population, man, they would knock them on the head real quick. And we haven't seen many praying mantis in my yard this year, unfortunately, or many assassins this year. So, Deborah Jane says here, this season I planted garlic and parsley. The parsley thrived, the garlic failed, but I think the weather affected the garlic. It's been a tricky one for garlic this year, and I would say you're pretty much right. And I believe that I haven't done a lot of garlic growing, but I believe it's coming up in the season for planting garlic again. Yeah, so yeah, go for it. We've got here lacewings and praying mantis. So yeah, you can Google these things and look up if they're found locally in your area or in your country, and what type of habitat they like. Find out these insects, and then grow the habitat and the flowers and things. When you grow more flowers, you'll find that you get more insects coming in, but you also get more predators as well. And so we need to keep that balance. We need to always have sap sucking insects around so predators have got something to eat. So this is something that we need to keep that balance. And when we go in and do big sprays and we kill everything, we take things, whether we're using an organic spray or a chemical synthesized spray, also we could be creating that problem. So just got to be careful on what we do here. Now, I didn't really get many answers on whether they believe it works. We had one yes, that was from me. And I think the other people who are listening are just, they're interested in the stories and what's going on there. So we're going to run to 45 minutes. If you've got, and we're in 35 minutes now, we may finish a little earlier if we don't get any of the questions. I'm going to talk about perennials now because fruit trees, you can plant some great companions with them as well, such as the comfrey plant. If you're in the right climate, look how comfrey plant. If you're in a very hot climate, you need to put more shade. Cooler climate, more sun for the comfrey, but it's a deep-rooted plant and it pulls up nutrients from down deep out of the soil profile, brings it back to the surface into the leaf, and then drops the leaf to mulch down underneath the tree. So it's creating this recycling system underneath the tree. You can also use the comfrey leaf to produce your other types of fertilizers, feed your worm farms, feed your chickens, things like that. So great plant to do. My other favorite one is actually underneath fruit trees, which a lot of people don't grow, is the betel leaf. It's grown right throughout Southeast Asia. It's related to the pepper plant, and it produces a great little wrap, and you can steam it as well. It has an earthy taste, not for everyone, but super healthy, and it throws out runners like a strawberry. I've got videos in here about the betel leaf plant, so you go to my channel, type in betel leaf, and you'll see all the content on it. And once you've got this plant, if you've got the right temperature, and you're just going to have it forever. And you buy it once and it will produce food for you for years and years, over and over and over. So before we go, if you've got any favorite perennial plantings that you'd love to share, my two favorite ones. Obviously, actually, another one really good one that I use is garlic chives under trees. And they say that it keeps away ants, so stops scale. I don't know if that is true, but they do grow really well underneath fruit trees, so it's a good way of using space. And look, if it does work, more the better. There is another plant that I can't think of the name at the moment, but it produces a green color, and they grow it under tansy. So tansy is another really good one. And I know that keeps away ants because you can actually grab tansy, throw it in like a dog pan or anything like that, where there's mites, or you've got, what do you call it, little fleas and things. You can throw it around your house if you've got dogs have been bringing flea problem in and they just bail. They hate it. So tansy is definitely one of those ones that I've trialed and works really well. And it's not, I don't think we eat it so much. It's more used for coloring, an old plant for coloring green clothes. So yeah, tansy, one of those ones that work quite well. And Deborah Jane says here, I put time with my tomatoes this season, both are doing well. So yeah, that falls into that system that I was talking about with actually planting things that grow together. You can cook together and grow together. And thyme is one of those ones that we put into a tomato recipe. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's a great one. And we've got here, so neem oil emulsified with horticultural soap or silica, and a secret tip for adding salicylic acid, which strengthens cells' walls, is 60 milligram of aspirin dissolved in 1 liter of spray. If you can strengthen cell walls, as Aaron was saying here, so I'll just leave that up for a second if someone wants to write that down. When you're creating really good soils and you're feeding your soils and not thinking about feeding the plants, organic plants create a very strong cell wall. And this creates a barrier and creates a very hard structure for a lot of sap sucking plants. They can't get their pierces down in there. That's why a lot of time they go to the tips of things, plants that got too much nitrogen or been over nitrogen fed, and they're getting quick, fast, accelerated growth. But around the top, there's a lot of sap flow, and there's also soft material for them to pierce into. So, yeah, great point there. And thank you so much for sharing that. But if we feed the soil, not the plants, and we're also working with our below the ground companion planting systems. And it says here, plant herbs all around your garden. Yeah, so to track the beneficial insects, to track the predators, and it's also, it just looks really nice, right? So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so what we do here in this these live shows, if you've watched right through the rerun, please let me know in the comments box down below. I always love it seeing that. And if you've watched right in the rerun as well, and you've got any questions, leave them in the comments box. There's a whole lot of links also in there. And if you want to support the feed, I'm just going to put this up while we're finishing up here. You can do so. I'm running a whole series of sort of live shows and videos and things over this month to just see how the channel goes and fares up, and the direction that we're going to be taking. And by becoming a member at the Buy Me a Coffee page there, you're really supporting me in this channel here and helping create some balance. YouTube really fluctuates a lot. Sometimes we can change from like 30% in the AdSense just overnight or within that month, and it's really unpredictable. So yeah, if you want to help out, you can just put your phone on there. There's also Buy Me a Worm Farmer Beginner's Guide over there, and yeah, for around about a coffee a month, you can help support this channel. Now, in the chat box, you can say goodbye to your friends in there, and say goodbye to me also in there, and I will pull up those comments and questions and whatever. Well, it's not so much questions, we're getting near the end, but just goodbyes. And yeah, I'd love to read them. And I'll just see what we got here as I scroll down into the software. Here we go. Awesome. All I ask for is you have a wave for me. You know, I went yesterday, Aaron, down to Brunswick where I live. A terrible wave yesterday it was, but I thought, you know what, I'll catch some foamies or whatever, and I might get one turn in or something like that. Just off the side of the south side of the river mouth. There was no one out. Water was a bit brown because we've still got some rain around. Hasn't fully cleared out of the systems. And I thought, oh, it's a bit sharky like that. But I've got a band that I put around my leg. And it's got a magnet in it for keeping away bull sharks. Anyway, there was a guy swimming in the shore break, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll go out. I'll paddle out the back, which is only about, I don't know, 50, 80 meters. There's sort of a back break and then a little shore break. And there was a guy body surfing. There's no one else surfing. Anyway, as I was walking out, the fisherman said, "Hey, don't go out. There's a bull shark out there." And I was like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Oh, far out," you know, like. Anyway, I'll just go for a swim. And within about 5 minutes of swimming, there was all these fish around. And the Aboriginal fella told me, he said, there's a lot of fish around. I said, yeah, I wouldn't do it. And I was like, okay, I'll just go for a swim. And as I was fishing, the guy that yelled out at me hooked onto the shark, or one of the sharks. And so I didn't have a surf, but I went and had a bit of a body bash. And I may go and have another look again this afternoon or in the next couple of days. Yeah, I'm definitely getting back in the water. So if you see me on here less, then yep, that's where I am. I'm either fishing or surfing. And yeah, so hopefully you're healing up well too, mate, and you'll get back in the water in the near future. And Jim said, see you, mate. See you. Bye, Jim. I'll have a look at those that email that you sent me, those images, and I'll get back to you, mate. I'm excited to have a look at them a bit later. Yeah, so say goodbye to your friends in here. Say goodbye to me in here. We've still got 7 people watching. If you haven't given us a thumbs up, please do before you go as well. And we'll just keep plugging along. And I'd pull up this comment before we head off. We've got a minute left. I'd just like to say to everyone in chat, this is the best gardening community, as we all know how to actually write a complete sentence and communicate. So it's not, I don't know about the other ones, but yeah, cool. Thanks, Aaron. Look, I do, again, I think that what's happening is I'm not providing all this dopamine super visual experience, but I know a lot of people do enjoy this slower paced content that's really just adds a lot of value. And we do talk about things that aren't on trend at the time, and but they're just important. Like today, we spoke about really good soils. We spoke about how plants share sugars under the ground. We got some really great comments from people in here to help other people, which is really where we want to be. And, we talked about different insects that you can look for, how to look for them in the garden. We talked about ecosystems, all these really cool things. And for me, I'm a big fan of companion planting above and below the ground. I don't know if we have a word for the below the ground companion planting yet, but one of the first discoveries with that was the marigold. African marigold produces a pheromone underneath the ground, if that's what it is, and it actually moves out in front of the root system and moves through the system away from any type of, say, eelworms and things that predate. And it pushes out an antibiotic, which looks a bit like a ghost in front of the root. And you can see that online if you search it up and find that. And Derry Browning says, "Oh, love that." So yeah, like I said before, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so through the support me. I'm going to say support me. Buy me a coffee page. You can pick up the worm farming book there, and also we do have on the channel. So we've got the Worm Wranglers members area where you can do that also. So thank you everyone so much for coming to watch the show. I'm going to go and have some brekkie now, late breakfast for me. My wife's in there waiting in the kitchen, maybe having some breakfast now, Shirley, and we're going to do some gardening. All right, have a great day. I might even have a surf this afternoon, Aaron. We'll see how the things pan out, mate. Maybe no sharks. We'll see you at the next video real soon, and God bless. Love thy neighbour, as I like to use at the end.